Imagine yourself soaring high above the clouds, wings crafted from feathers and wax strapped securely to your back. You're Icarus, and beneath you lies the sprawling blue ocean, the air crisp and exhilarating. You rise higher, feeling unstoppable, invincible. But slowly, the warmth of the sun intensifies into heat, melting the wax that holds your fragile wings together. Suddenly, your ascent turns into a desperate plunge. In moments, triumph transforms into tragedy, ambition into hubris, and freedom into ruin. This powerful scene isn't merely a cautionary tale from ancient times. It's a profound reflection of human nature, ambition, and the delicate balance between reaching for our dreams and understanding our limitations. Yet, despite its age, the story of Icarus continues to resonate deeply. Why? Because Greek mythology, filled with gods, monsters, heroes, and ordinary mortals thrust into extraordinary situations, captures something timeless about the human condition. Greek myths endure because they confront the fundamental aspects of being human: love, loss, ambition, courage, fear, and hope. These stories aren't simply entertaining fables, they are mirrors reflecting our deepest struggles and aspirations. Thousands of years later, we still turn to these myths because, despite modern advancements, the essence of humanity remains unchanged. People today grapple with the same existential dilemmas faced by ancient heroes and mortals. When we revisit these myths, we don't just revisit history, we revisit ourselves, discovering profound insights into our own lives. Whether it's the relentless toil of Sisyphus endlessly pushing his boulder uphill, or Pandora opening a box filled with unforeseen consequences, each myth embodies a crucial philosophical lesson about how we live, think, and interact with the world around us. Throughout this video, we'll journey through 10 remarkable Greek myths, each selected for the depth and power of the philosophical truths they illustrate. As we explore each story, we will unravel the wisdom hidden within these ancient narratives, translating them into practical lessons relevant to our contemporary lives. By understanding the tale of Narcissus, we'll learn about the subtle yet destructive nature of vanity and ego, recognizing how unchecked self-obsession can poison relationships and isolate us. Through Hercules and his seemingly impossible labors, we'll grasp the critical importance of resilience, perseverance, and confronting life's challenges head-on, no matter how daunting they appear. From Prometheus's courageous rebellion against divine authority, we'll reflect on the virtues of bravery, sacrifice, and the human capacity for profound innovation, even at great personal risk. Our aim isn't simply to recount these myths, but to illuminate their hidden depths, connecting ancient wisdom directly to your experiences today. Each story will help you better understand yourself, your choices, and the world around you. You'll gain a richer perspective on familiar struggles, finding meaning, handling ambition responsibly, overcoming grief, managing curiosity, and much more. By the end of this exploration, you'll see that Greek myths aren't relics of a distant past, but rather living guides that offer clarity, inspiration, and profound philosophical insight. As we move forward, keep this thought in mind. These myths are powerful precisely because they tell us something essential and enduring about ourselves. Let's dive deep into these ancient stories, uncover their wisdom, and discover together how these timeless lessons can transform our lives. Imagine waking up every single morning with the exact same daunting task waiting for you, knowing fully that no matter how hard you try, you'll never accomplish it completely. You pour your strength and energy into it day after day, your muscles aching, your mind exhausted, and yet every night, the task resets itself, uncompleted, waiting again for your effort the following day. This repetitive cycle, as frustrating as it sounds, was the eternal punishment handed down to Sisyphus, a figure from ancient Greek mythology. According to myth, Sisyphus was a clever but deceitful king who repeatedly angered the gods through his cunning tricks and manipulations. As punishment for his defiance, Zeus condemned him to roll a huge boulder up a steep hill for eternity. Every time Sisyphus reached the peak, the boulder would inevitably slip from his grasp and roll back to the bottom, forcing him to start all over again. It's easy to feel a sense of deep futility just imagining this scenario. After all, isn't constant effort without reward one of humanity's greatest nightmares? Yet, French philosopher Albert Camus saw something deeply profound and even inspiring in the myth of Sisyphus. He saw it not just as a tale of punishment and endless torment, but rather as a powerful metaphor for the absurdity of human existence itself. To Camus, life inherently lacks absolute meaning or a guaranteed purpose. We, as human beings, are placed into a world that doesn't provide clear answers to our most urgent questions. Why are we here? What is the purpose of our lives? Why do we suffer and struggle only for our achievements to seem fleeting or temporary? This essential mismatch between our desire for clarity and meaning and the chaotic, indifferent reality we face is what Camus defined as the absurd. Now, you might wonder, if life truly is absurd and meaning isn't handed to us naturally, how can we go on? Should we surrender to despair or simply quit trying altogether? Camus' answer is bold and surprising. He argues that precisely because life is absurd, we have the ultimate freedom to create meaning ourselves. By fully accepting that our existence lacks intrinsic meaning, we're liberated from the unrealistic expectations of finding permanent fulfillment or achieving perfect outcomes. Camus famously wrote, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy." What he meant was that true freedom comes when we accept our daily struggles, not because they promise some final reward, but because they represent our continuous commitment to life itself. When we embrace life's absurdity without resistance, we gain strength in the very act of perseverance. This philosophical perspective holds immense practical significance for our daily lives. It challenges us to reconsider how we view our daily tasks, routines, and responsibilities. Think for a moment about your own daily boulders. Perhaps it's your job, where tasks never seem to fully end, or perhaps it's the endless responsibilities of family, studying, working out, or trying to maintain meaningful relationships. Often, these daily challenges can feel repetitive, thankless, or even pointless. But what if, instead of resenting these tasks, you could approach them as Sisyphus eventually must, embracing them for the intrinsic value they provide in simply doing your best day after day? Consider how liberating it would feel to detach your self-worth from outcomes that are ultimately outside your control. Instead of obsessing over final results, like promotions, recognition, social validation, or perfect outcomes, you could focus fully on the process itself, taking pride in your resilience, dedication, and commitment. Imagine the mental freedom of being satisfied, not solely by external results, but by your internal effort, character, and perseverance. Suddenly, the challenges that once seemed burdensome become vehicles through which you express your resilience and strength, no longer dependent on external rewards to justify their value. This doesn't mean you shouldn't set goals or strive for improvement, far from it. Instead, it means that you should approach goals as guides rather than ultimatums. Your fulfillment doesn't hinge solely on the achievement of distant targets. Rather, it's derived from your ongoing dedication and meaningful participation in life's journey itself. Camus encourages us to see the absurdity of life not as a reason for despair, but as an invitation to freedom. Freedom to choose our own meaning, to embrace our efforts regardless of final outcomes, and to joyfully participate in life's daily rituals. Practically speaking, you can implement this philosophical lesson into your daily life by actively shifting your mindset. When facing repetitive tasks, remind yourself that value lies in the doing itself. Next time you face your own symbolic boulder, pause for a moment to acknowledge your strength, your determination, and the simple dignity of engaging fully in your life. Appreciate small victories, moments of connection, progress, learning, and growth, without obsessing over whether they yield permanent or impressive outcomes. Learn to find joy and pride not in ultimate successes or praise, but in the daily act of showing up and giving your best effort. Think of Sisyphus again. Though condemned to eternal repetition, there is power in his relentless commitment. Each new attempt he makes embodies the resilient spirit of humanity, the strength to push forward despite knowing that perfect achievement is elusive. Like Sisyphus, we too can find dignity, even joy, in our ceaseless pursuit of meaning, not because the struggle promises permanent success, but precisely because the struggle itself is meaningful. By embracing life's inherent absurdity, we free ourselves from anxiety over outcomes and find fulfillment in simply living each day with purpose, courage, and resilience. Imagine standing on the rocky shores of an island, imprisoned and dreaming desperately of freedom. This was precisely the situation for Icarus, the son of the brilliant craftsman Daedalus. According to the Greek myth, Daedalus was imprisoned along with his son Icarus on the island of Crete by the tyrannical king Minos. Yearning for freedom and escape, Daedalus conceived an extraordinary plan. He would build wings made from feathers held together by wax, allowing them to fly away and escape their captivity. Before their journey began, Daedalus carefully warned Icarus about the risks involved. Fly too low and the sea's spray will weigh down your wings, pulling you under. Fly too high and the sun's heat will melt the wax, sending you plunging back down to earth. With his father's careful instructions in mind, Icarus took flight, experiencing a freedom unlike anything he had ever known. At first, he heeded his father's advice, soaring gently above the waves, cautiously embracing his newfound freedom. But soon, exhilaration turned to recklessness. Consumed by the thrill of flight and a feeling of invincibility, he climbed higher and higher toward the blazing sun. Inevitably, the heat of the sun softened the wax binding his wings, and feathers began to loosen and fall away. In a tragic instant, joy turned to horror, and the young man plummeted into the sea, lost forever beneath its waves. This myth, though ancient, continues to resonate deeply because it captures the timeless tension between ambition and moderation, between taking risks and knowing our limits. It confronts us with a challenging question: how far should we pursue our dreams and ambitions? And when should we temper our desires with caution and humility? The story of Icarus is often interpreted as a warning against reckless ambition, reminding us of the potential consequences of unchecked aspiration. But if we delve deeper, it also cautions us against excessive caution, emphasizing the necessity of balance in all aspects of our lives. The tragedy of Icarus isn't simply that he fell, but that he was unable to strike the delicate balance between caution and daring, between moderation and ambition. In today's society, we often celebrate ambitious individuals who relentlessly chase big dreams and lofty goals. Ambition itself isn't inherently bad. Indeed, ambition drives innovation, personal growth, and meaningful change. But as the myth of Icarus powerfully illustrates, there's a fine line between courageous ambition and reckless overreach. When ambition spirals out of control, it can blind us to the risks involved, leading us to ignore wise advice, ignore warning signs, and make decisions driven by ego and arrogance rather than reason and humility. Ambition without humility becomes hubris, an inflated sense of self that inevitably leads to downfall. Yet, if ambition is tempered excessively, the opposite problem arises. We might remain trapped in comfort zones, never daring to challenge ourselves, explore new territories, or fully realize our potential. Daedalus's warning, "Don't fly too low or too high," embodies precisely this balance. In our personal and professional lives, maintaining the courage to take thoughtful risks is critical. It's what allows us to experience growth, pursue meaningful goals, and ultimately find genuine fulfillment. But equally crucial is developing the humility to understand our own limits, respect reality, and accept guidance from wiser or more experienced mentors around us. Practically speaking, how can we incorporate the lesson of Icarus into our daily lives? First, it begins with self-awareness. We must continually reflect on our motivations, honestly asking ourselves, am I driven by genuine passion and purpose, or am I chasing validation, status, or ego-driven success? The more honest we are about our intentions, the easier it becomes to set appropriate boundaries, embrace meaningful challenges, and prevent reckless behavior driven by pride or vanity. Self-awareness allows us to recognize when our ambitions become misguided or excessive, enabling us to adjust course before we risk falling disastrously. Second, we should embrace calculated risks while maintaining thoughtful limits. Responsible risk-taking doesn't mean avoiding challenges. It means deliberately evaluating risks, preparing accordingly, and approaching challenges with both courage and caution. Whether it's embarking on a new career, starting a business, pursuing an advanced degree, or exploring a new relationship, it's crucial to realistically assess both opportunities and potential consequences. Ambition should be channeled productively, accompanied by careful planning, ongoing feedback, and periodic reassessment of our goals. Instead of blindly racing toward our objectives, we should set meaningful checkpoints, staying open to advice, criticism, and adjustments along the way. Third, humility plays a critical role in balancing ambition. Humility reminds us that we are not infallible, that we make mistakes and sometimes misjudge situations. Adopting a humble mindset doesn't mean minimizing our strengths. Rather, it means being open to feedback, seeking guidance from others, and willingly learning from our experiences. Humility helps us navigate setbacks constructively, viewing mistakes as opportunities for growth rather than personal failures. If Icarus had tempered his excitement with humility and listened carefully to his father's guidance, he might have flown safely, enjoying freedom without catastrophe. Applying the lesson of Icarus means recognizing the value of moderation in relationships, careers, and life decisions. Just as flying too close to the sun can melt our metaphorical wings, allowing work, ambition, or personal goals to completely dominate our lives can harm relationships, health, and emotional well-being. Moderation ensures balance. It reminds us to allocate time and energy thoughtfully among career aspirations, personal passions, family, friendships, rest, and leisure. It helps us avoid burnout, loneliness, or regret, common consequences when we relentlessly chase goals without regard for balance and moderation. In essence, the myth of Icarus challenges us to thoughtfully balance ambition and humility throughout life. Ambition propels us forward, inspiring progress and accomplishment, while humility grounds us, providing essential checks and balances. Responsible risk-taking, guided by self-awareness and humility, enables us to navigate life's inevitable uncertainties, setbacks, and victories safely. Rather than avoiding ambition, the myth encourages us to approach our dreams thoughtfully, courageously, and wisely. Only by maintaining this delicate balance can we soar successfully, enjoying the exhilaration of achieving our potential without suffering catastrophic falls. In the early days of humanity, when the world was still fresh and untouched by suffering, the gods were not always generous. According to ancient Greek mythology, the Titan Prometheus had stolen fire from the gods and gifted it to humankind, an act that enraged Zeus, king of the gods. In retaliation, Zeus devised a plan, not one of brute force, but of temptation. He ordered the creation of the first mortal woman, Pandora. The gods bestowed upon her many gifts: beauty, grace, charm, music, and most importantly, an intense and irresistible curiosity. Along with Pandora, the gods gave her a sealed jar, commonly mistranslated as a box, and warned her never to open it. But as days passed, Pandora's curiosity grew. She wondered endlessly about what secrets the jar might contain. Why had it been given to her at all if she were never meant to open it? Eventually, unable to resist the temptation, she lifted the lid. In that moment, everything changed. Out of the jar flew disease, sorrow, greed, envy, anger, all the evils that would go on to plague humankind forever. Horrified, Pandora tried to close it, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. And yet, deep at the bottom of the jar, one thing remained: hope. This myth, as short and simple as it seems, carries an enormous weight of meaning. At its core, it's a story about the power and peril of curiosity, the inevitability of unintended consequences, and the enduring presence of hope. Pandora's tale reflects a universal truth. Human beings are naturally curious. We are drawn to the unknown, to the forbidden, to the mysteries that lie just beyond our reach. This impulse is not inherently bad. In fact, it's what drives discovery, invention, and growth. But like fire, curiosity must be handled with care. When left unchecked, it can lead us into dangerous territory, violating boundaries, disrupting balance, or unleashing consequences we never intended to face. In philosophy, this theme appears again and again. The Enlightenment, for example, was fueled by human curiosity, the desire to understand nature, society, and the self. But even in the pursuit of knowledge, thinkers warned against overstepping certain ethical and existential boundaries. The myth of Pandora acts as a cautionary tale, not to suppress curiosity but to wield it responsibly. It reminds us that every action has a ripple effect. Opening Pandora's box is not just about breaking rules or seeking forbidden knowledge. It's about the reality that even small, seemingly innocent choices can have profound and irreversible impacts on ourselves and others. In today's world, this lesson is more relevant than ever. We live in an age of instant information, boundless experimentation, and technological acceleration. We can ask almost any question and receive an answer within seconds. We have the ability to peer into private lives, access any part of the world, manipulate genetics, and explore digital landscapes previously unimaginable. Curiosity is no longer limited by physical space, it's endless, but with this abundance comes risk. What do we do with all this knowledge? How do we ensure that the doors we open are worth the consequences that may follow? Managing curiosity constructively begins with intent. Before pursuing something simply because we can, we should pause and ask why we want to know or experience it. Are we seeking truth, growth, connection? Or are we driven by impulse, voyeurism, or ego? Just as Pandora reached for the lid without considering what might lie within, we too are tempted by quick gratification or reckless exploration. But awareness is the key difference. When we slow down and think about the possible outcomes of our actions, whether it's clicking a link, confronting a loved one, experimenting with new lifestyles, or making a risky decision, we transform blind curiosity into conscious inquiry. Equally important is accepting that not all consequences can be predicted. Sometimes, even well-intentioned actions lead to pain, conflict, or loss. In those moments, the part of Pandora's myth that we often overlook becomes vital: hope. Despite all the evils that escaped the jar, hope remained. It wasn't crushed, corrupted, or destroyed. It waited quietly at the bottom, perhaps as a gift, perhaps as a reminder that no matter how bad things become, the human spirit is capable of enduring, adapting, and healing. Hope is not wishful thinking. It's not denial or naive optimism. Philosophically, hope is the capacity to envision a better future even when circumstances are bleak. It's what gives us the strength to keep moving forward after loss, to try again after failure, and to believe in the possibility of redemption, repair, or growth. In a world where we often open doors we later regret, whether through relationships, business ventures, or personal choices, hope is what keeps us from becoming cynical or paralyzed. It restores meaning when the chaos feels overwhelming. To embrace this lesson practically, we must learn how to navigate regret with responsibility. When you've made a choice that led to pain, opened your own Pandora's box, you don't need to deny it or run from it. Instead, you can face the consequences with courage, learn from what happened, and hold on to the hope that you are not defined by your mistakes. Growth doesn't come from always getting things right. It comes from facing what we've done, understanding why we did it, and using that knowledge to make better choices moving forward. In our relationships, this might mean pausing before saying something impulsive during a fight. Curiosity can make us want to get to the bottom of things or find the truth, but doing so recklessly can cause damage. In our careers, it might mean resisting the urge to pursue every shiny opportunity and instead focusing on what aligns with our values and long-term goals. In our personal lives, it might mean practicing digital mindfulness, resisting the endless scroll or the temptation to pry into others' lives out of boredom or insecurity. Finally, let's not forget that hope, just like curiosity, is something we can cultivate. It's not something we must passively wait to feel. It's something we practice. We foster hope by surrounding ourselves with people who uplift us, by engaging in meaningful work, by witnessing stories of resilience, and by believing on a deep, steady level that even when darkness enters our lives, light can follow. In the end, the myth of Pandora doesn't end with despair. It ends with hope quietly waiting at the bottom of the jar, a silent promise that no matter what we unleash, something within us is always capable of healing. So the next time you're about to open a box, whether it's exploring an idea, confronting a challenge, or stepping into the unknown, pause and reflect. Ask yourself not just, what could I gain, but also, what might this unleash? And whatever comes of it, remember, hope is always within reach. Even in the wake of chaos, we are not alone in our struggle, and the future remains open to change, redemption, and renewal. In Greek mythology, few figures are as iconic and universally recognized as Hercules. Strong, fearless, and nearly invincible, he wasn't just a hero in the physical sense. His story is one of suffering, endurance, and ultimately, redemption. What many forget is that Hercules' legendary feats didn't come from a place of glory or triumph. They came from deep personal tragedy. Driven mad by the goddess Hera, Hercules committed a horrific act. He killed his own wife and children in a fit of divine-induced madness. When he regained his senses and realized what he had done, he was consumed by guilt. To atone for this crime, he sought purification and was given a seemingly impossible sentence. He would have to complete 12 brutal labors, each more dangerous and overwhelming than the last. These weren't just physical challenges, they were symbolic of the inner torment and emotional burden he carried. Yet through each one, slaying the Nemean lion, capturing the golden hind, cleaning the Augean stables, he persisted. And in that persistence, Hercules became more than a tragic figure. He became a symbol of human resilience. At its core, the story of Hercules and his 12 labors is not just about strength, but about transformation through hardship. It's about what happens when you are broken, when you have lost everything, and when you are given a choice. Either collapse under the weight of your guilt and pain, or face the impossible, one step at a time. Philosophically, this tale speaks directly to the virtue of resilience, the ability to endure suffering and rise stronger because of it. Life doesn't always give us fair conditions. Sometimes we are thrown into situations we didn't ask for. We experience heartbreak, illness, failure, loss, and betrayal. And yet, like Hercules, we are still responsible for how we respond. That's the real power of his story, not that he was strong, but that he kept showing up again and again in the face of unbearable difficulty. Resilience is not about never falling. It's about what you do after you fall. When you've hit rock bottom, when you're exhausted, when the goal seems too far away, resilience is what allows you to get back up. It's not a magical trait you're born with, it's a discipline you build over time. Hercules didn't succeed because he felt confident every day. He succeeded because he didn't give up. Even when each labor seemed impossible, even when the gods mocked him, even when the path forward was unclear, he kept going. And this is perhaps the most essential lesson for anyone trying to grow, heal, or succeed in modern life. You don't have to be perfect to make progress. You just have to keep going. This lesson becomes especially relevant when we consider our own labors. You may not be asked to slay mythical beasts, but you might be fighting the long, slow battle of healing from trauma, overcoming addiction, building a business, finishing a degree, raising a child alone, or simply surviving in an environment that constantly challenges your peace of mind. These are not small tasks, they are your labors. And just like Hercules, they will test every ounce of your patience, endurance, and faith. But here's the thing. Every act of perseverance makes you stronger. Every day you show up and give your best despite pain, fear, or exhaustion is a day you move closer to reclaiming your power. We live in a culture that often glamorizes quick wins and overnight success, but the truth is that real growth is painfully slow. It happens in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, when no one applauds you, when no one even knows how much you're struggling. That's when your character is built. That's when you learn what you're really made of. Discipline is doing the right thing even when it's hard, boring, or thankless. It's waking up early to train, staying focused on your goals, and choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term pleasure. And the beautiful part is, the more you practice this, the more you transform not just your situation, but your identity. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as someone who can face anything. Let's look more closely at a few of Hercules' labors, because each one carries a metaphor that can apply to your own life. Take, for example, the task of cleaning the Augean stables, a seemingly mundane job but a monumental one. These stables hadn't been cleaned in years and were filled with filth. Rather than scrubbing by hand, Hercules rerouted rivers to wash them out in one great surge. What does that teach us? That sometimes the only way to deal with long-ignored problems, emotional wounds, toxic habits, or stagnant situations is with radical action. It may not be glamorous, but facing the mess head-on is often the only way to create real, lasting change. Then there's the Hydra. Each time Hercules cut off one of its heads, 2 more would grow back. This monster symbolizes the kinds of problems that seem to multiply no matter how hard we try to eliminate them. Anxiety, addiction, negative thinking. Hercules had to learn that brute force alone wasn't enough. He eventually cauterized each neck to prevent new heads from growing. In your own life, it's a reminder that sometimes solving a problem means going deeper than the symptoms. It means addressing the root, changing your environment, your mindset, or your relationships. It's about being smart, not just strong. Perhaps the greatest transformation in Hercules' story is not that he completes the labors, but that he reclaims his sense of self. His journey is one of redemption, not just in the eyes of the gods, but within his own conscience. Through struggle, he earns peace. Through effort, he earns forgiveness. And that's what resilience does for us too. It teaches us that even if we've made mistakes, even if we've done things we're not proud of, there is always a path back. That path is built not in a day, but step by step, labor by labor. To apply this in your daily life, ask yourself, what is your next labor? What difficult task or uncomfortable conversation have you been avoiding? What personal challenge requires not a burst of energy, but consistent effort over time? Start small. Commit to showing up daily, not perfectly but intentionally. Track your progress. Celebrate small wins. Build discipline like a muscle. One rep, one choice, one step at a time. And when you fail, and you will, get back up. Remember that every hero's journey includes setbacks, doubts, and moments of despair. What defines the hero is not that they never suffer, but that they never stop moving forward. The myth of Hercules reminds us that even the most broken person can find redemption. Even the most impossible challenges can be overcome, not with ease, but with resilience. Your suffering doesn't disqualify you from greatness. If anything, it prepares you for it. So embrace the struggle, lean into the labor, and remember that you are not alone in your battle. Like Hercules, you have the strength within you to face whatever comes. Keep going, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. In the ancient world of Greek mythology, where gods ruled over mortals with unchallenged power, one figure stood apart for his daring defiance: Prometheus. He was a titan, older than the Olympian gods themselves, and unlike many of his kind, he had a special fondness for humanity. According to the myth, in the earliest days, humans lived in a primitive state, cold, vulnerable, and ignorant of many of the tools that would later define civilization. Fire, a symbol of both warmth and knowledge, was kept by the gods and forbidden to man. Without it, humanity remained powerless, subject to the whims of nature and the darkness of night. Prometheus saw this and chose to act. In a bold and rebellious gesture, he stole fire from Mount Olympus and gave it to humanity, defying Zeus, the king of the gods. It was an act of immense risk, one that would change the world forever. But the punishment was brutal. For this transgression, Zeus chained Prometheus to a rock where each day an eagle would descend to tear out his liver, only for it to grow back overnight, making the torment endless. Prometheus' story is one of the most profound in Greek mythology, not just because of his suffering, but because of what it represents. Fire in this myth is not just a tool, it is a symbol of knowledge, creativity, and progress. By stealing it, Prometheus didn't just break a rule, he broke a hierarchy. He disrupted the natural order of power, favoring growth and advancement for the weak over control by the strong. In this light, Prometheus becomes much more than a mythic figure. He becomes a timeless symbol of courage, sacrifice, and the human spirit's refusal to accept ignorance or oppression. His myth speaks to the heart of every person who's ever challenged the status quo, questioned unjust authority, or risked safety to bring light to others. The philosophical lesson here is rich with meaning. At its core, Prometheus' story is about moral rebellion, the kind of rebellion that isn't selfish or chaotic, but rooted in compassion and vision. He sees the suffering of others and chooses to act, knowing he will suffer in return. That's the kind of courage that isn't loud or dramatic, but deeply ethical. It's the courage of those who stand up for justice, invent new paths forward, or challenge the rules when those rules hurt more than they help. Socrates echoed this Promethean courage centuries later when he chose to die rather than stop questioning the world around him. Galileo showed it when he challenged the Church's view of the universe. Countless thinkers, creators, and reformers throughout history have carried the torch Prometheus lit, often paying a steep price for doing so. But this myth also touches on something deeply modern: the cost of innovation. In a world that values comfort, tradition, and control, innovation is often perceived as a threat. Those who try to introduce new ways of thinking or living, whether it's inventing new technology, reimagining education, advocating for social reform, or even challenging outdated norms, often face resistance. Not because they're wrong, but because change is uncomfortable. Prometheus knew that giving humans fire would shift the balance of power, and that's exactly why Zeus punished him. He wasn't just punishing the theft, he was punishing the idea that humanity could rise above its assigned place. In practical terms, this lesson invites us to look at our own lives and ask, where am I being called to bring fire? That fire might be an idea you've been afraid to share, a project that seems too bold, a truth you're hesitant to speak aloud, or a change you want to make in your community, career, or relationships. Too often we silence ourselves because we fear consequences, judgment, failure, or rejection. But Prometheus shows us that meaningful change is rarely comfortable and never risk-free. True innovation asks for courage, it demands sacrifice, and it requires that we care more about progress than approval. Of course, not everyone is called to rebel against gods or institutions. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is to challenge your own limitations, to break free from the mental chains that keep you stuck in place, to stop waiting for permission to grow. When you choose to learn a new skill, start a creative project, leave a toxic environment, or speak your truth in a world that prefers silence, you are embodying the Promethean spirit. You are choosing to light a fire not just for yourself, but for others who are still sitting in the dark, waiting for someone to show them the way. This myth also reminds us that sacrifice is part of the process. We live in a culture obsessed with immediate gratification and risk-free results. But any path worth walking will cost you something: time, energy, security, sometimes even relationships. Prometheus teaches us that suffering isn't always a sign you've made a mistake. Sometimes it's the clearest sign you're on the right track. His pain wasn't meaningless. It was the cost of giving others something priceless. The question is, what are you willing to suffer for? What vision, value, or mission are you committed to, even when it hurts? It's important too to acknowledge the danger of stagnation. Without people like Prometheus, who challenge and push the boundaries, humanity would remain in a state of dependency and darkness. Fire transformed the human world. It led to cooking, warmth, protection, industry, and eventually, civilization. In your own life, what fire are you withholding because of fear? What gift are you keeping to yourself because someone told you it's not practical, safe, or acceptable? The world needs people willing to create, to light new paths, ask new questions, and build things that haven't been built before. That might mean writing a book, launching a business, starting a conversation no one else wants to have, or simply living more authentically in a world that prefers conformity. But courage doesn't mean recklessness. Prometheus didn't steal fire impulsively. He did it with purpose, knowing exactly why it mattered. Innovation must be grounded in vision and responsibility. This isn't about burning things down just to feel powerful. It's about understanding what needs to change, why it matters, and who it will serve. True innovators aren't interested in chaos. They're interested in transformation. Lastly, we can take comfort in knowing that Prometheus' story doesn't end in despair. In some versions of the myth, he is eventually freed by Hercules, another hero of resilience. This hints at a deeper truth. Sacrifice and suffering may be part of the journey, but they are not the end. When we act with integrity and courage, even when we face backlash, we plant seeds for a better future, seeds that someone else may help nurture and free. Just as Hercules came along generations later, the results of our actions may blossom long after we're gone. So, what will you do with your fire? Will you keep it hidden, afraid of what might happen if you share it? Or will you light the path for yourself and others, even if it costs you something? Prometheus reminds us that the world changes not through comfort, but through courage. That progress doesn't come from obedience, but from vision. And that the greatest gift we can give the world is not our silence, but our spark. The story of Orpheus and Eurydice is one of the most hauntingly beautiful myths in all of Greek mythology. It's not a tale of war or gods or grand heroism. It's a quiet tragedy about love, loss, and the human struggle to accept what cannot be undone. Orpheus was a poet and musician whose talent was so powerful that even the stones and trees would move to hear his music. He fell deeply in love with Eurydice, a woman of such grace and kindness that their union seemed to exist in a world untouched by sorrow. But fate can be cruel. Soon after their wedding, Eurydice was bitten by a venomous snake and died, her soul descending into the underworld. Devastated, Orpheus refused to accept her death. He could not let go. He played songs of such sorrow and longing that even the gods wept. Moved by his grief, they allowed him to travel to the realm of the dead to try and retrieve her. In the underworld, Orpheus played his lyre with such aching beauty that Hades and Persephone, the king and queen of the dead, granted him a rare chance. Eurydice could return with him to the world of the living under one condition. He must walk in front of her, and he must not look back until they had both fully emerged into the light. It was a simple instruction, but a test of trust and restraint. And so Orpheus began his journey back to the surface, Eurydice walking silently behind him. Step by step, they climbed through the darkness. But just as the first light of the living world touched Orpheus's face, doubt crept in. What if she wasn't really behind him? What if the gods had tricked him? What if he had lost her again and didn't even know it? Unable to bear the uncertainty, he turned around, and in that instant, Eurydice vanished forever. This myth captures something painfully real, the way grief and uncertainty can lead us to sabotage the very things we hope to preserve. Orpheus's act of turning around wasn't just a physical movement. It was a moment of emotional weakness, of needing confirmation, of not being able to live with not knowing. And that's what makes this myth so profound. It reflects the human tendency to look back, to cling to what is lost, to seek closure, to try and undo the irreversible. But sometimes, the more we try to hold on, the more we suffer. Sometimes, healing begins only when we stop looking back. Philosophically, this story invites us into the painful but necessary work of acceptance. We all experience loss in some form. Loss of loved ones, relationships, dreams, opportunities. And in the face of that loss, the mind rebels. We replay moments, imagine different outcomes, ask endless what-ifs. Like Orpheus, we walk forward while constantly glancing backward, hoping that somehow our gaze can bring back what has already slipped away. But the truth is, we cannot rewrite the past. What's done is done. The more we resist this, the more we prolong our suffering. Letting go, however, does not mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the loss never mattered. Acceptance is not about erasing the past. It's about acknowledging reality without constantly trying to reshape it. It's the quiet strength of saying, "This hurts, I miss them, I wish it were different, but I cannot change it." and I will not allow my pain to define my future. That's the real test Orpheus failed, not because he didn't love Eurydice, but because he couldn't trust life enough to move forward without certainty. In daily life, many of us struggle with our own versions of this myth. Maybe we keep checking on someone who left us, rereading old messages, or hoping for an apology that may never come. Maybe we dwell on a mistake that cost us an opportunity, replaying it in our minds as if we could somehow will it into reversing itself. Or maybe we refuse to move on from a dream that didn't come true, convinced that letting go would mean we failed. But clinging to the past doesn't keep us safe, it keeps us stuck. Like Orpheus, we risk losing the beauty and possibility that exists ahead of us by constantly turning back toward what we cannot change. So how do we let go gracefully? First, by allowing ourselves to feel the loss. Suppressing grief only delays healing. Let yourself mourn what was lost, whether it's a person, a relationship, a version of yourself. Speak about it, write about it, cry about it. There is strength in vulnerability. But after the grieving comes the choice, to keep reliving the story or to write a new one. Acceptance begins with the decision to live again, to re-engage with the world, even if it's been scarred by pain. Second, we must learn to sit with uncertainty. Orpheus's mistake was rooted in doubt. He needed proof that Eurydice was behind him. In our own lives, we crave closure, explanations, guarantees. But the truth is, much of life is uncertain. We don't always get clear answers or tidy endings. Sometimes we must trust without seeing the full picture. We must walk forward knowing that some questions may never be answered, and that's okay. Inner peace is not found in certainty, but in our willingness to move forward anyway. Third, acceptance requires compassion for ourselves and others. Loss often brings regret. We wonder what we could have done differently, but punishing ourselves for the past doesn't change it. It only adds another layer of pain. Self-compassion means saying, I did the best I could with what I knew at the time, and that's all any of us can ever do. Forgiveness, both for ourselves and those who hurt us, is not about condoning harm. It's about freeing ourselves from its grip. Lastly, this myth reminds us of the power of love even in loss. Orpheus loved Eurydice deeply. That love didn't die with her disappearance. It lived on in his music, in his story, in the hearts of those who hear it today. The people we lose don't vanish completely. Their impact remains in how they shaped us, what they taught us, how we live because of them. Moving on doesn't mean erasing that connection. It means honoring it in a way that lets us continue living. So when you find yourself haunted by the past, tempted to look back, remember Orpheus. Remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is keep walking forward, even when you're not sure what's behind you. Letting go is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the strength to say, I cannot change what was, but I can shape what comes next. Loss will visit all of us, but acceptance, when we're ready, can be the beginning of something new, not the end of something old. Keep moving, keep trusting, and know that every step forward is a quiet act of courage. Proof that you are still alive, still growing, and still capable of creating something beautiful, even after everything you've lost. In a quiet forest glade surrounded by still water and delicate wildflowers, there once lived a young man named Narcissus, whose beauty was unmatched. According to Greek mythology, Narcissus was so stunning that people from far and wide would come just to gaze upon him. but he was cold, distant, and indifferent to the love of others. He rejected every admirer with cruelty and pride, believing no one could ever be worthy of him. Then one day, while wandering alone through the woods, he bent down to drink from a clear spring. In the surface of the water, he saw a face so captivating, so flawless, that he instantly fell in love. Not realizing it was his own reflection, he became entranced, unable to look away, unable to touch or embrace the object of his affection. He stayed there, frozen, longing for a love he could never have. Eventually he wasted away, consumed by obsession, and died at the edge of the pool, still staring at himself. In the place where he had fallen, a delicate white flower grew, forever bearing his name, the Narcissus. This story is more than a simple warning about vanity. It's a deep exploration of how unchecked self-obsession can lead to isolation, delusion, and ultimately, self-destruction. Narcissus didn't just admire himself, he fell in love with a false image, mistaking appearance for substance. He couldn't look away because he believed that reflection was him, yet it was nothing more than a surface, an illusion. The myth holds a mirror up to us and asks, how often do we chase our own reflections? How often do we become enamored with an image of ourselves, whether it's our physical appearance, our social media profiles, our reputation, and forget to engage with the real world, the people around us, or even our true selves? Philosophically, this myth serves as a powerful cautionary tale about the dangers of ego, vanity, and the pursuit of self without depth. It reminds us that self-love, when inflated and detached from reality, can turn toxic. There is a difference between confidence and arrogance, between self-respect and self-worship. When we place our entire worth in how we appear to others, or even how we appear to ourselves, we risk becoming like Narcissus, mesmerized by the surface but hollow underneath. The more we curate an image of perfection, the harder it becomes to look inward, to face our flaws, or to build genuine relationships. Instead of growing, we become trapped, staring into a pool of our own reflection, searching for love in an illusion. In modern life, this story feels more relevant than ever. We live in an era dominated by images, selfies, profile pictures, status updates, likes, and followers. We're encouraged, even rewarded, for projecting polished versions of ourselves. We filter our faces, edit our lives, and market our personalities like brands. But in the pursuit of looking good, we often lose touch with being real. Narcissus would thrive on Instagram, but he'd also be deeply lonely, disconnected, and spiritually starved. The myth warns us not to confuse attention with connection or appearance with worth. When we value ourselves solely based on external validation, we become fragile. We're happy only when we're praised, and devastated when we're ignored. The danger here is subtle. It doesn't always show up as obvious arrogance. Sometimes narcissism disguises itself as insecurity, overcompensation, or the constant need to prove ourselves. We obsess over how we're perceived. Did they like my post? Did I sound smart? Do I look successful enough? And slowly, our identity becomes shaped by mirrors, what others reflect back to us, instead of what we truly value, believe, and feel. Narcissus was cursed not just with beauty, but with blindness, the inability to look beyond the surface, even his own. So how do we avoid falling into this trap? How do we develop genuine self-awareness without getting lost in self-obsession? The first step is recognizing the signs. Ask yourself, am I more focused on how I look than how I act? Do I spend more time curating an image than cultivating my character? Do I seek validation more than I seek truth? These aren't always easy questions to answer, but they're necessary. Self-reflection must go beyond the surface. It's not about judging yourself harshly, it's about being honest. Narcissism grows in the absence of honest self-examination, but awareness, real deep awareness, is how we break the spell. The second step is practicing humility. This doesn't mean putting yourself down or denying your strengths. It means understanding that you are one person among many, that your worth isn't greater or lesser than anyone else's, and that you don't need to be extraordinary to be valuable. Humility keeps us grounded. It helps us appreciate others, ask for help, admit mistakes, and stay open to growth. Narcissus couldn't connect with others because he saw himself as above them. But the truth is, we grow most through connection, through the honest, sometimes messy process of learning from others and being vulnerable with them. The third step is building identity from the inside out. That means focusing less on how you're seen and more on who you are. What are your values? What do you care about when no one's watching? What kind of person are you when you're not performing? Real confidence doesn't come from applause. It comes from integrity. When your actions align with your values, when you live with purpose and honesty, you don't need mirrors to tell you who you are. That's the antidote to narcissism, not self-hatred, but authentic self-knowledge. Finally, develop empathy. One of the saddest parts of Narcissus' story is that he couldn't love anyone else. He was incapable of recognizing or valuing the feelings of others. True self-awareness includes an understanding of how we affect the people around us. Are we kind? Are we listening? Are we building others up, or using them to reflect our own worth? Narcissism is a closed loop. Me, me, me. But empathy breaks that loop. It opens us up to the experiences, joys, and sufferings of others. It teaches us to look outward, not just inward, and to find meaning in connection, not just admiration. The story of Narcissus is a mirror held up to all of us. It challenges us to look deeper, to question our relationship with ourselves, and to remember that true beauty isn't something we see in a reflection. It's something we cultivate in our actions, our thoughts, and our relationships. Self-love is important, but it must be balanced by humility, awareness, and compassion. Otherwise, we risk becoming trapped in a fantasy, blind to the real world, and ultimately blind to ourselves. So ask yourself, am I chasing a reflection, or am I building a self I can truly respect? Am I looking outward for approval, or inward for direction? The path away from narcissism is not shame, it's awareness. It's the daily practice of turning away from the pool and toward real life. Because in the end, we don't find ourselves in mirrors. We find ourselves in moments, in growth, in connection, in truth. And those are the things no reflection can ever show. In the rich world of Greek mythology, the tale of King Midas stands out as a parable that feels strikingly modern. It's the story of a man who had everything, wealth, power, status, but still wanted more. Midas was a king with an obsession: gold. He adored it, hoarded it, and measured his success by how much of it he possessed. One day, after showing kindness to the god Dionysus by taking care of his companion Silenus, Midas was offered a reward. Without hesitation, he asked that everything he touched be turned to gold. Dionysus granted the wish, warning Midas to consider the consequences. At first it seemed like a dream come true. Midas turned stones into gold, furniture into treasure, flowers into sparkling ornaments. But the wonder quickly turned into horror. When he reached for food, it turned to gold, impossible to eat. When he embraced his daughter, she too became a lifeless golden statue. His blessing had become a curse, his wealth a prison. Starving, grief-stricken and broken, Midas begged the gods to take back the gift. Eventually, they took pity on him and reversed the wish. He had learned too late. the painful cost of greed. This story is more than just a warning against wanting too much. It's a deep reflection on the illusion of wealth and the danger of defining our lives through material success. Midas believed that by having more gold he would be happier, more powerful, more fulfilled. But he misunderstood a basic truth about human nature: that fulfillment does not come from what we accumulate, but from what we experience, especially our connections with others. When everything he touched turned to gold, even love and nourishment became lifeless. The very things that made life worth living, food, touch, family, were stripped of meaning. In trying to make everything valuable, he made everything empty. Philosophically, the myth of Midas challenges us to think about what we truly value and how we measure success. Materialism, in its essence, is the belief that happiness can be found in external possessions, in things we can own, show off, or use to elevate our status. It's an appealing belief, especially in a world that constantly advertises comfort, luxury, and abundance as the ultimate goals. But like Midas, we often chase material wealth thinking it will fill the void inside us, only to discover that it leaves us more isolated, anxious, and disconnected than before. The more we rely on stuff to make us happy, the more fragile our happiness becomes, because things can be lost, stolen, outdated, or broken. And when our self-worth is tied to what we own, we're always one step away from feeling worthless. We see this all the time today. People working endless hours to afford bigger houses or fancier cars, only to be too exhausted or distracted to enjoy them. Social media flooded with curated images of luxury lifestyles, vacations, watches, designer clothes, all signaling that this is what success looks like. But behind many of those images are people feeling unfulfilled, chasing likes instead of love, and struggling with the constant pressure to do more, buy more, and be more. It's the modern version of the golden touch. We turn experiences into content, relationships into networking opportunities, and identities into brands. And in the process, we risk losing what really matters. So what's the alternative? How do we live wisely in a world that glorifies material success? The first step is to redefine what wealth means to you. True wealth is not just financial, it's emotional, relational, intellectual, and spiritual. It's the depth of your friendships, the health of your mind and body, the peace you feel when you're alone, the joy of meaningful work, and the sense of purpose that guides your actions. Ask yourself, what makes me feel truly alive? What memories do I cherish most? Chances are it's not things, it's moments, conversations, challenges overcome, people you love. These are the real treasures and they can't be bought. Second, practice gratitude. One of the reasons Midas wanted more was because he couldn't appreciate what he already had. He had a kingdom, a daughter, a comfortable life, but it wasn't enough. Gratitude grounds us in the present. It helps us notice what's good, even when life isn't perfect. When we take time to appreciate the little things, a warm meal, a kind word, a quiet moment, we become less driven by the constant urge for more. And ironically, the more grateful we are, the richer we feel. Third, invest in relationships, not just resources. Midas' story takes a tragic turn when he turns his own daughter into gold. That moment is symbolic of what happens when we prioritize wealth over people. In real life, we may not turn loved ones into statues, but we can neglect them, use them, or lose them when we chase success too blindly. Relationships take time, presence, and care. They require attention, not just money. And in the end, it's those connections that give our lives the deepest meaning. Fourth, embrace simplicity. Simplicity doesn't mean deprivation, it means choosing what matters most and letting go of what distracts. When we declutter our lives physically, mentally, emotionally, we create space for clarity and joy. You don't need to give up all your possessions or live in a cabin in the woods. But maybe you don't need 10 pairs of shoes. Maybe you don't need to upgrade your phone every year. Maybe you don't need to say yes to every opportunity if it costs you your peace. Living simply is about aligning your life with your values, not society's expectations. Finally, remember that value is not the same as price. Gold is valuable, but it's not everything. Some things, like love, kindness, creativity, honesty, can't be measured in dollars, but they change lives. When Midas turned everything to gold, he learned that not all that glitters is good. The most precious parts of life are often the ones we overlook when we're too focused on getting ahead. The myth of King Midas is a timeless reminder that more is not always better. That having everything means nothing if we lose the ability to enjoy, to feel, to connect. It's not a condemnation of success or wealth, but a call for balance. You can pursue your goals, earn money, and enjoy nice things, but let them serve your life, not define it. Let your wealth be a tool for generosity, not just accumulation. Let your ambition be guided by purpose, not ego. So the next time you find yourself chasing the golden touch, more stuff, more status, more recognition, pause and ask, at what cost? Will this bring me closer to the life I want, or further from what really matters? What would I trade to keep what I already have? And am I living in a way that, if everything turned to gold, I'd still feel full inside? Because the truth is, life's real value isn't in what you touch, but in how you live. And if we can remember that, we can avoid Midas's curse and instead create lives of depth, meaning, and true abundance. Deep within the twisting corridors of the labyrinth, a maze so complex that no one who entered could ever find their way out, lurked a monster. Half man, half bull, the Minotaur was a terrifying creature, the embodiment of rage, isolation, and raw power. Every year, as punishment and tribute to King Minos of Crete, Athens was forced to send 7 young men and 7 young women to be devoured by the beast. It was a sentence of fear and shame for the Athenians, until one man, Thesus, decided he would end it. He volunteered to go, not out of arrogance, but because he believed the cycle of terror had to be broken. With only a sword and a ball of thread given to him by Ariadne, King Minos' daughter, Theseus entered the labyrinth. He left a trail of thread behind him so he could find his way back and venture deep into the darkness, where he finally confronted the Minotaur and killed it, ending the cruel sacrifices and bringing hope back to Athens. On the surface, this might seem like a classic hero's tale. Courage, cleverness, victory over a beast. But symbolically, the labyrinth and the Minotaur are much more than that. They represent the inner world, our hidden fears, traumas, insecurities, and destructive patterns. The labyrinth is the confusing, winding network of thoughts and emotions we often find ourselves lost in. The Minotaur is the part of us we're afraid to face. Our anger, our addictions, our shame, our shadow. Theseus's journey is not just through a physical maze, it's a journey into the unknown corners of the self. And the real victory isn't just slaying the beast, but confronting it head-on, refusing to run, and finding a way out with clarity and courage. Philosophically, this myth speaks to the necessity of inner confrontation. We all have a labyrinth. We all have a Minotaur. Most of us spend our lives avoiding them, distracting ourselves with noise, burying uncomfortable thoughts, numbing emotions, or projecting our fears onto others. But those strategies don't eliminate the monster, they just leave it lurking in the dark, growing stronger. The more we avoid our inner demons, the more power they have over us. Anxiety, for instance, often grows when we refuse to name it. Resentment festers when we deny it. Trauma lingers when we suppress it. But when we shine a light into the labyrinth, when we're brave enough to look inward, something changes. We see that the monster isn't as untouchable as we thought. It has a shape, a story, a beginning, and most importantly, it can be faced. Theseus didn't walk into the labyrinth blindly. He had a plan, the thread. This detail, while often overlooked, is one of the most profound symbols in the entire myth. The thread represents self-awareness, or what the ancient Greeks might call notheseoton, know thyself. It's the lifeline that keeps us grounded when we venture into deep emotional territory. Without the thread, you may defeat your demon, but never find your way back. You may confront your fears, but get lost in them. The thread ensures that we don't lose our sense of identity while exploring the more chaotic, painful, or shadowy parts of ourselves. So how do we apply this in real life? How do we face our own internal minotaurs without being overwhelmed? The first step is naming the beast. You can't fight what you won't face, and you can't face what you refuse to name. Take a moment to identify your inner struggles. Is it self-doubt, guilt, fear of failure, chronic anger, insecurity in relationships, addiction to validation? Don't judge yourself for having them. Acknowledge them with honesty. We often think our demons make us weak or broken, but the opposite is true. Everyone has them. Facing them is what makes us strong. Second, create your thread, your path of return. This could be a daily journal, a meditation practice, therapy, trusted friends, or a personal philosophy that keeps you grounded. Your thread is anything that helps you stay centered while you explore the deeper layers of your inner world. When you start reflecting on your past, your wounds, or your behavioral patterns, it's easy to spiral into blame, shame, or confusion. That's why you need something that reminds you of who you are beyond your pain, something that keeps you tethered while you go deeper. Third, confront the Minotaur, not with violence, but with understanding. Facing your inner demons doesn't always mean defeating them. It often means understanding where they come from. Why do you react with rage when you feel disrespected? Why do you pull away when someone gets close? Why do you chase perfection or feel like you're never enough? These behaviors didn't appear out of nowhere. They were formed by experiences, often ones we didn't choose. By tracing the origin of our patterns, we loosen their grip. The Minotaur, in many ways, is just a wounded part of ourselves, guarding pain that's never been healed. Understanding it doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it gives us the power to change it. Fourth, take small, consistent actions toward healing. Inner work is not a one-time battle, it's a practice. You don't go into the labyrinth once and come out completely transformed. You go in again and again. Each time you return with a little more strength, a little more clarity. Set goals that are realistic. Build habits that support your growth. Celebrate progress no matter how small. Maybe it's speaking up when you'd normally stay silent. Maybe it's being kinder to yourself. Maybe it's pausing before reacting. These are modern-day victories in the labyrinth. Fifth, seek support. Theseus didn't enter the labyrinth completely alone. He had Ariadne, someone who believed in him, who helped him find his way. In your own journey, don't underestimate the power of guidance. Whether it's a mentor, a therapist, a friend, or a supportive community. Inner struggles often isolate us, but healing happens faster when we're not doing it all on our own. Vulnerability can be scary, but it's how connection and real transformation begins. Lastly, remember that the point is not perfection, it's progress. You may not defeat your inner Minotaur in one moment, 1 month, or even 1 year. But the fact that you're willing to step into your labyrinth, to confront the uncomfortable, to try and understand yourself, that already sets you apart. That is the journey of a warrior. And like Theseus, each time you face the darkness and come back with more wisdom, more strength, and more peace, you're not just surviving, you're evolving. In the end, the story of Theseus and the Minotaur isn't about slaying a monster. It's about reclaiming power. Power over fear. Power over confusion. Power over the parts of ourselves we've been too afraid to confront. The labyrinth exists within all of us. So does the Minotaur, but so does the hero, so does the thread, and so does the light waiting at the other end, if we're brave enough to walk toward it. In the ancient world of Greek mythology, there are few stories more enduring than the Odyssey, a long winding tale of a man named Odysseus and his relentless quest to return home. After the fall of Troy, Odysseus set sail for Ithaca, where his wife Penelope and son Telemachus await him. But what should have been a straightforward voyage turns into a 10-year epic filled with detours, dangers, and delays. He faces monsters like the Cyclops, temptations like the Sirens, wrathful gods, shipwrecks, betrayals, and heartbreaking losses. Time and again, just when it seems he's close to home, something pulls him farther away. Yet Odysseus never gives up. He keeps going, not because the journey is easy, but because he knows that home, however far it may be, is worth fighting for. And when he finally returns, it's not the same man who left Troy. He's older, wiser, battle-worn, and deeply transformed. This myth is not just about physical travel, it's about the nature of life itself. Odysseus' journey is symbolic of the path we all walk. It's long, unpredictable, filled with triumphs and tragedies, allies and enemies, clarity and confusion. We set goals, personal, professional, emotional, and imagine a straight line between where we are and where we want to be. But reality is rarely so simple. We get sidetracked. Things fall apart. Unexpected challenges test us. Sometimes we feel like we're moving backwards. But that's the point of the Odyssey. It's not a story about speed, it's a story about growth. Odysseus becomes a hero not just by reaching Ithaca, but by surviving everything it took to get there. His journey is what makes him who he is. Philosophically, the Odyssey teaches us to stop seeing life as a destination. In the modern world, we're obsessed with outcomes. We're told to find our purpose, to reach success, to get the dream job, the perfect relationship, the ideal body, the recognition we think we deserve. We treat life like a checklist. But that mindset creates anxiety and disappointment, because as soon as we reach one goal, another appears. And if we believe that happiness lies only at the end of the road, we miss the meaning of everything that happens along the way. The Odyssey reminds us that the journey itself is the real story, the struggles we endure, the mistakes we make, the lessons we learn, and the person we become through it all. One of the most profound aspects of Odysseus' journey is that he doesn't always make the right choices. He's clever and brave, but also proud, reckless, and sometimes arrogant. He gets his men killed, he angers gods, he stays too long in places he shouldn't. But these flaws make him real and relatable. Like all of us, he grows through trial and error. His wisdom doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from surviving, from adapting, from learning through pain. And this is one of the core messages of the Odyssey. That wisdom isn't something we're born with. It's something we earn, slowly, through experience, through hardship, through reflection. In everyday life, this has massive implications. We often expect ourselves to figure everything out quickly, to know exactly what we're doing, where we're going, and how to get there. And when things go wrong, we panic. We assume we're behind or failing. But what if the wrong turn is part of the path? What if the delays, the struggles, the confusion that we usually resist are exactly what we need in order to grow? What if we stopped rushing through life and started paying attention to it? When we embrace this idea, we give ourselves permission to live more fully. We stop measuring our worth by how far along we are and start focusing on how present we are. We become more open to change, more accepting of failure, and more compassionate with ourselves. Odysseus didn't reach Ithaca by racing, he reached it by enduring, and each experience, even the painful ones, taught him something essential. The lotus eaters taught him about the danger of complacency. The Cyclops taught him about the price of pride. Circe and Calypso taught him about temptation. The Sirens taught him that wisdom means knowing your limits. Each moment mattered. Each chapter shaped him. So how do we apply this to our own lives? First, we must reframe how we think about progress. Instead of asking how close am I to the goal, we should ask, what am I learning from this moment? That shift in focus changes everything. It turns setbacks into teachers. It turns failure into feedback. It reminds us that every experience, good or bad, is part of our becoming. Second, we must slow down and notice the journey. In our rush to get somewhere, we often miss what's happening right in front of us. We don't appreciate the people who support us, the small wins, or even the quiet moments of rest. But these moments are not meaningless. They are the heartbeat of life. The Odyssey isn't remembered because Odysseus got home. It's remembered because of what happened along the way. Your story will be remembered the same way. Third, we must develop resilience. Odysseus faced storms, monsters, betrayals, and still kept going. Life is unpredictable. Plans will fall apart. People will disappoint us. We will disappoint ourselves. But resilience means returning again and again, even when the odds are against you. It means trusting that as long as you're still moving, you're still becoming. You're still in the story. Fourth, we must honor our inner Ithaca. For Odysseus, Ithaca wasn't just a place, it was a symbol of belonging, love, and truth. We all have our own version of Ithaca, a state of being where we feel aligned with who we truly are. It's not about fame or wealth, it's about peace, about authenticity, about feeling at home in your own soul. That's what you're really moving toward. And the closer you get, the more you realize it was never just about reaching Ithaca. It was about remembering who you were the whole time. Finally, we must remember that we're all on our own Odyssey. We are all navigating our own labyrinths, facing our own monsters, making our way through life's unpredictable seas. And it's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay to be lost sometimes. What matters is that you keep going, that you keep growing, that you treat your journey with the reverence it deserves. Because this path you're on, no matter how winding, no matter how difficult, is not a mistake. It's your becoming. So wherever you are in your journey right now, whether you're just setting sail, stuck on a lonely island, lost in a storm, or finally catching a glimpse of home, remember, the road you're walking is shaping you in ways you can't yet see. Trust it, learn from it, honor it, and know that the hero in you is not the one who finishes fastest, but the one who refuses to quit. The Odyssey lives on because it reminds us of something we all need to hear. Life is not about the destination, it's about the journey, and every step, no matter how hard, is part of the story that makes you whole. We've just journeyed through 10 of the most powerful Greek myths, stories that, despite being thousands of years old, still echo with surprising clarity in our modern lives. Each myth, each character, each trial has offered not just entertainment, but timeless philosophical truths, reminders of what it means to be human, to struggle, to grow, and to find meaning along the way. We began with Sisyphus, endlessly pushing his boulder uphill, only to have it roll back down. His tale taught us that life's meaning isn't in the reward, but in the effort itself, that perseverance, even in the face of futility, can be its own kind of triumph. Then came Icarus, flying too close to the sun. From his fall, we learned the necessity of balancing ambition with humility, how chasing greatness is noble, but only when tempered by awareness of our limits. Pandora opened her jar, unleashing sorrow into the world, but also releasing hope. Her myth reminded us of the double-edged sword of curiosity and the importance of staying anchored in optimism, even when life turns dark. From Hercules, we drew strength. His 12 labors were more than feats of strength. They were a symbol of resilience, of taking responsibility for your past and transforming pain into purpose through disciplined action. Prometheus, the firebringer, risked everything to light the way for humanity. He showed us the courage it takes to challenge unjust systems, and how true progress often requires sacrifice from those brave enough to speak truth to power. We descended into the underworld with Orpheus, only to watch him lose Eurydice again. In his moment of weakness, we saw the deep human difficulty of letting go, and how sometimes healing only comes through acceptance. Narcissus taught us about the dangers of ego and self-obsession, how easy it is to fall in love with our image, and how real growth requires humility, self-awareness, and genuine connection to others. With King Midas, we were reminded that greed can hollow out even the richest life. That fulfillment doesn't lie in gold or possessions, but in love, in presence, and in learning to value what can't be bought. Thesus, who braved the labyrinth, showed us how to face our inner demons, how courage is not just physical but psychological, and how we each must navigate our own mental mazes with honesty and intention. And finally, Odysseus taught us that life is a journey, not a destination, that wisdom is earned through struggle, and that every obstacle is part of the path that shapes who we are becoming. So, which myth spoke to you the most? Which lesson do you need right now? These stories aren't just about ancient heroes, they're about you, your fears, your ambitions, your failures, and your hopes. And if there's one truth they all share, it's this: the journey of being human is messy but meaningful. As the philosopher Plutarch once wrote, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled." Let these myths kindle something in you. Not just thoughts, but action, insight, and transformation. Because your story is still being written, and like every great myth, it's worth telling.